I'm 100% behind the parents' right to educate their kids as they see fit. I'm also 100% opposed to private school vouchers. My parents are teachers. When I was in second grade, they decided our little country school just wasn't cutting it anymore. So my mom went to teach at a private school, took a big pay cut, made sacrifices so they could pay that private school tuition. I know folks that are educators that make similar decisions to homeschool, to take that cut in pay and stay home. And I think that that is absolutely a parent's right. But I see it kind of like Charles, but a little differently. You know, I think I can find the radical jihadi in the crowd, okay? The reason I don't think voucher money needs to be in the private schools is a more under the radar creeping reason, and that's that Austin educrat who wants to get in there and make those controls happen a little more insidiously. I think that the good private schools offer an alternative and homeschooling as well, and we don't want to see that taken away. I do think that we've got to have more local control in our public schools, that we've got to let school boards run those schools and superintendents, because if they do something we don't agree with, we can meet in a room just like this, we can go beat those guys. There's a 1 in 150 chance that our state rep's going to be chairman of public ed. But if that school board screws up, this group right here is big enough, we could go win a school board race. And that's why I think we need local control, is to keep that stuff in check.
Right, first, most successful private schools that I'm aware of are usually, not always, but usually church related. And if you start funding those private schools with state money, then pretty soon you're going to have the same court orders that you would have in the public schools to take religion out of education. And most parents have chosen to send their children to the private schools because of a church relationship. And I'll defend your right forever to make that choice, to send them to a private school and homeschool them if that's your choice. But I would not put any public money there, because that would, number one, undermine the public school system. It would eventually undermine your private school system and make it the same as public schools. And I think your choices then would be nowhere. So I think the government is your right to maintain a private school, but I won't subsidize with tax dollars. Thank you.
I got a question. I agree with Charles and probably all three of y'all that economic development is the key to keep us from losing representation to West Texas, or hold on to representation we got, or increase it down the road. But economic development that brings in jobs, and I know that water has been brought up a couple different times. I'd just like to hear your solution on the water issue and what we can do to grow, have economic development here in West Texas.
Go ahead, your thing.
It's always good to finish up second there.
I went over to get a drink of water.
I was happy to be one of the first candidates to bring water out as a top issue. Everybody seems to follow suit, and I'm glad for that, because I believe, honestly, water is the absolute most important this area faces. What I've learned through this process, and it's been an interesting process, we've got smart people working on that problem. Several levels, two levels in my opinion. There's a legal issue, and then there's actual water issue. We've got a High Plains District water resource, and they're about conservation, and they've got a 50-50 in place that says 50 years from now we want 50% of our aquifers still be in place. They've got that plan in place to hopefully start putting that together. That's going to be coordinated throughout the region. That's a conservation effort. There's technologies out there for reclamation that if you can get past the yuck factor of drinking affluent water, which a lot of large cities are doing, there's some of those technologies out there. There's also the legal side of it, which is who is it, who owns it, who has it, what can they do with it, can they sell it out, and at what price? That's going to be handled at the court, the judiciary. Those are valid concerns and need to be dealt with, but we need to keep it at the local control for water. I'm one of the guys that I think, honestly, that has spoke out probably more vocally. We've got to find other resources of water. We've got aquifers that we're currently not tapping, and talking to Some of the guys are in it, they say they're out there, they're deep, they're deeper, they're a little brackish in nature, but they are cleanable and they will work. And we need to start talking about that, because if we don't make that a priority of discussion today, 15 years from now, when we have exhausted our aquifers, or exhausted our reclamation efforts, or have exhausted those other things, we're going to be up the creek without the paddle, without the water in this case. But we've got to start putting it as a funding priority. Nothing moves without funding. And if we keep ignoring the fact that we're going to need water 15 years from now, and we haven't started a process in which how we're going to go about funding that money and pull that water up and start using it, we are going to literally be 10 years down the road and go, oh my gosh, we're out of water. There are literally some aquifer systems or places in this region that 5-year water supply is the max. They're going to be out. And that's not Chicken Little, that's reality. So I think I'm the one that's pitching that we really need to start pursuing, putting funding behind the new resources. Go ahead and tap those other aquifers and do it. And then there's a balance there. You know, the first question I get when I'm in this discussion with farmers and ag people and oil and gas interests, well, what does that mean? Are you going to compete for our water resources? Well, Lubbock, and I think it's due to some really strong leadership, Duncan and some of those guys, they have made it work to where the rules that come down the pike at the local level and the state level, they don't compete with the ag interests. We only do that in one county in this area, I'm told, and that's up around the Bailey area. But we have to protect that ag interest. But you do that through technology. There is technology that is dropping the input cost per acre on water to where farmers can truly go out and buy the new technologies to save the water and justify it economically. And they've got to be in the discussion. They've got to be brought to the table. And I think that's what we've learned over time is you bring those producers in, you show them a better way to produce, they can get more for their value, more for their acres, and they cost them less to do it, then they're a partner. They begin to take ownership of that. So we are working it on technology, we're working it in different areas, but at the end of the day, we can only conserve and save so much. So if we don't start getting serious about putting that as part of our state process, I think states should do this: public education, public safety, and infrastructure. We have an entitlement system that's out of control that needs to be dealt with, and I'll deal with those because those are not politically correct things to discuss in open forums because you step on people's toes, but they will bankrupt the state also. But we need to deal with public safety, public education, infrastructure, and in that infrastructure, we need to bring our water into that process. And we just need to start getting a statewide initiative on how all these water plans and aquifers are going to work together, keep the control local, but it's going to take bigger minds than ours just to sit around and think about it. We need to start bringing it to the table to talk. So I think water is it. Water is going to be the key to our economic stability in this region, and I think more water is ultimately going to be discussed, and it's going to cost money to do that. And politicians don't like to talk about anything longer than 2 years, and they don't like to talk about anything that's going to cost money. And those things don't bother me because I don't have a desire to be a politician. So we're here to fix problems that affect us on a day-by-day basis 25 years from now.